The whole Liam Kumar Day effect, not really happened.
Nigel couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I rang up Mendon all, he said he could make it.
Don't dig this hole. Phil, credit to the guy, he always manages to do well what he has, but he is a shocking person right now. You guys got a trophy? No.
It was pre-event.
No, my life from Rashad Mendon.
Right, you guys, I'm a tag jack! I'm a fucking tag!
And welcome back. We're nearing the midpoint of the LOC season, and this episode is not just called Middle Class for the win for that reason, but it's because everything is really tight in the middle right now in the LOC. I'm joined by the co-host, as per, Chris Leach. Yeah. How's it going, Chris Leach?
Oh, that's it. Fine week had by all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. I'm alright.
Yeah?
Alright, I'm feeling good.
Did you get to go and see Bruce Springsteen in the end? We're all dying to...
I didn't see Bruce Springsteen in the end. No, everyone looked like they had a great time, but apparently there were 25,000 people on the website to buy tickets at 8 o'clock.
For a bookstore.
That's it.
That's
it. It went down. And then there was 10,000 people were there after every minute for 10 minutes. So the probability was quite low.
It sounds it. It does sound it. But we won't dwell on that because we have some LOC stuff to blast through for you. So we'll get straight to it with the league news. So transactions, quite a few this week, as there has been for the last few weeks. So Tom Torrance added Jack Doyle and dropped Vance McDonald. What do you make of that one?
I think
Dwayne Allen got injured.
Yeah, Jack Doyle has also been shown a little bit more promise anyway. I mean, even earlier in the season when Dwayne Allen was fit, he was marked as a sleeper, so I think that's a really good pickup.
Yeah. Dream Team added Vernon Davis and dropped Philip Dossett. Blast from the past right there.
Yes.
Cash for Gold added Zach Zenner and dropped Kenneth Dixon. Tugfuds added Jaquiz Rogers and dropped Victor Cruz. That's quite a big one. Cruz was Tugfud's favourite, I think it's fair to say.
Well, yes, absolutely, but
back in the day.
Well, it's true, but just he's no one's favourite now. He's not even Eli Manning's
not even Eli's, ADRZ added Kenny Britt and dropped ADRZ. Now, on the surface of this looks hilarious, but Kenny Britt is actually on course for about 1,300 yards.
Yeah, Kenny Britt had a really good game at the weekend, didn't he?
That was his kind of bringing his fantasy relevance to the attention, let's say, because he's actually been pretty good. I don't think the touchdowns have been there, but he really showed how kind of fantasy relevant he could be. So not a bad ad by ADRs either. Pedersen added Golden Tate and dropped Brian Hoyer. Badet Nailers added Niall Davis and dropped Devontae Adams. Sorry, not Devontae Parker. Cincinnati Gridiron Gang added Cincinnati Bengals defense. Tugfuds added Colin Kaepernick and dropped Tennessee Titans defense.
Back.
Do you want to tell me about this one?
Well, what do we know?
He's starting for the Niners again. We know that.
We know that much. Do you know what? I think
he's vegan. We also know this.
We also know that he's up for black rights as well.
Very much so, even though he's Mexican.
That's it. And I think he's brought up by two white parents as well. He's adopted.
Kaepernick, Danish or something.
Yeah, something like that. So good for Cap. But other than that, I'm not sure he's going to do a great deal.
Yeah. Patterson added Ty Montgomery and dropped Tavon Austin. The Tugfuds added Dustin Hopkins and dropped Caleb Sturgis.
It wouldn't be a week without Phil picking up a kicker.
Certainly would. Patterson added Mike Nugent and dropped Graham Gano. Perhaps not the only team Graham Gano gets dropped from this week. Cash for Gold.
Absolutely. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Ron Rivera's face just went, what?
He's having a tough one right now. Cash for Gold added Dan Carpenter and dropped Chris Boswell. Tom's kickers of the week right here. Tom's Torrance added Green Bay Packers D and dropped Houston Texans D, and the Dream Team added Andre Ellington and dropped Orleans Darkwa. A massive bag of who gives a fuck this week. I think
absolutely
it's
too many kickers going off the board for me. But
not the most exciting of waivers, I'd say. But there are also some injury news to speak of. Again, quite a quiet week, I think it's fair to say, with regards to injury. These multi-week guys still out, and nothing really that much new. No. Randall Cobb, he has that neck injury still, but he should be fine for Thursday night's game. Doug Martin could return this week from that hamstring injury that's cost him quite a few games.
Well, that'd be good. Chris Rogers' pickup was just completely out of wasted time.
He hasn't. He didn't practice yesterday, So we'll have to see how he practices today. But at the moment, I would say he's questionable.
Okay.
Eric Decker, in between the space our extremely early episode last week, and now was placed on IR with a torn rotator cuff.
Ooh, he's gone.
So he is done for the season.
Oh dear.
What makes it even worse for him, not really any fancy relevance here, this season at least. He's got to have hip surgery before he can have the torn rotator cuff surgery. The hip surgery is a 6-month recovery, and he'll be on crutches, not for all of that, but part of it, and he can't get the torn rotator cuff surgery until he's off the crutches, which in itself is a 6 to 8 month recovery. So
it's a whole year of being
he
there.
could potentially, his status for next season, at the start of it at least, is certainly in question at the moment.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Dream Team, Latavius Murray missed another game with his toe. I'd say he's questionable. I don't really know. I haven't really seen much. Might play, might not.
Well, no one's really seen much of him this year. So he's been missing.
You'd be forward for knowing if he was injured or not.
Yeah.
There's Bryant, meanwhile. We did actually report that one quite early in the week that he wasn't going to play. That looked less and less likely, what I said later in the week, that he did in fact not play.
No.
So I was right. But that being said, he was that close, it seemed, coming back. He should probably come back this week. Still treat him as questionable, but I would imagine he returns. Meanwhile, Tom's Tyrants, they lose Eddie Lacy to at least a multi-week ankle injury from what I've seen. He went to see Dr. Anderson, I think, the foot and ankle specialist, and it's usually not a good thing for players when that happens.
No.
It usually means a surgery of some sort.
Right.
So that's a multi-week injury. How big is that for Tom's Tyrants?
Well, I think you're right, and I think that Eddie Lacy, judging by his performance at the weekend, started just to ramp it up a little bit. I saw the first,
especially with James Starks going down. He was literally the only healthy running back on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was that was destined to be a match made in heaven, really. But say it's not to be. Say another year. Well, another team where a running back gets blown out, and it's not good for Tom's Tyrants because they don't really have a very shaky. They have pretty shaky foundations anyway, so they're even shakier now.
Yep. But that being said, Tyler Eifert could make a return. It's about the time in the preseason where we were thinking he would come back. I think he was questionable last week, so he's obviously going to be questionable again this week.
Yep.
But he could play this week.
Well, number one scoring tight end last year, I think.
He got 13 touchdowns. Yeah. So
there you go. That says it all, really. And if they can find a little bit of form there, Bengals have a good asset come back, and Tom's Tyrants do.
Yeah, absolutely. The Brady Bunch. Now, I don't know too much about this one. Carlos Hyde was seen with his arm in a sling, which generally isn't a good thing.
Not ideal.
I don't know what the injury is. I haven't seen an update between when I last saw that and when I last checked.
Right.
So I would treat him as highly questionable based on that and that alone.
That's it.
And watch the space.
Everybody's rushing Sean Drawn this year.
Hey, I had him last year and he actually was a credible player.
Really?
He made some spot starts for me and did pretty well.
Okay, well there you go. Watch this space, people.
Yeah, Tugfards, they had a pretty big injury last week, which led to one of the waivers we just saw. Ben Roethlisberger has a partially torn meniscus, I believe. He had surgery to remove the torn part of the meniscus, which is apparently a thing. And he's not done for the season, but he is facing a multi-week injury.
Oh dear.
So
rolling the cap.
Yeah, indeed.
Bold.
Who would have called, or everyone would have called Phil was pulling Kaepernick at the start of the season. It was bound to happen.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Well,
it's a Tugfards thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So who's the backup in Pittsburgh these days?
Something Landry.
Okay. Right.
Something Landry.
Someone not worth picking up.
I would say no. I would say no.
Fair enough.
Ben Necessity should get Stephon Diggs back this week. He was questionable the week before with the groin injury, missed it. But he's been on a bye, so you'd hope he's healed enough to come back this week.
Yep.
Well, Dante Moncrief, I think I saw a report saying he's still about a week away from returning with his shoulder injury, so treat him as doubtful this week. Maybe make a surprise return, don't know, but probably more likely for next week than this week. Iknan, Steve Smith's ankle injury is still unclear. I don't believe he practiced yesterday. Could make a return between now and then, but again, treat that as questionable.
Yep.
Finally, Will Fuller and his hamstring missed last week's game. He was doubtful going into that one. Depending how he bounces back, could play again, probably questionable. So those are your largely unhelpful injury updates. The NFL gets worse and worse every week with their details on injuries. Hey, there we are. We'll dive straight into last week's stuff. And we'll start off with the marquee matchup of last week, which, to be fair, probably turned out as the marquee matchup, which doesn't happen very often.
No.
Gridiron Gang took on Iknan. We all know Iknan. They were 10-3 against Gridiron Gang coming into this one. Our Gridiron Gang perhaps looked the slightly better team. Really, both these teams have been really good this whole season long.
Yeah.
Gridiron Gang was 4-1 entering. Iknan was 2-3, so a little bit different situations, but really, like I said, quite similar strength of teams.
Yeah.
And once again, like I said last week, history repeats itself. Iknan won 113 to 101. Tell me about this game.
That's true, and to be quite honest with you, it's very, very even. And you look down the board, and actually a lot of players match each other up.
Yeah, they do. I did notice that. Yeah, there's very little between it.
That's it. Derek Carr and Russell Wilson didn't have overly, didn't have great games between them, but fantasy-wise, certainly not. The two running backs obviously matching each other up. Shady had a great game on Sunday night.
Yeah, he did.
And then David Johnson comes back in, comes up with 3 touchdowns.
Doesn't happen that often. Then again, both the running backs in this one. That would have been a Tom's Tyrant, E.Locker corner.
Yeah.
Bold prediction. The running backs both get 6 touchdowns. You missed a trick there, Tom.
What you doing,
that was an
man?
easy win.
Yeah,
easy.
You could have been on 2 on 30 or whatever. Yeah, that's it. But here the evenness does go down the board throughout, but there's one difference, and I think
there is one big difference.
It's tight end.
It is tight end.
That's it. Kobe Flynn had a great game.
He did.
He actually turned up for New Orleans. It was a
2 touchdowns.
A blowout win. Well, I say not blowout win. It was a shootout, but eventually, thanks to Graham Gano's stupidness, and that's how he allowed him. So anyway, that's the difference between the two teams here. There's not a lot in it. There's a reason why both are, as we'll see later on, Grace top of the power rankings, and Gridiron Gang should take a little bit of heart from that. But Iknan, after a pretty uncomfortable loss last week, come back this week.
A good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Iknan goes to 3-3, levels it up, while Gridiron Gang fall to 4-2, but remain in first place. And of course, Iknan are now 11-3 against Gridiron Gang. So yay. We'll get through this one really swiftly because this is going to be a painful one for you. Pakistan against Forward Flyers. I believe entering this one, you were 0-2 all time against Pakistan.
That's about right.
Yeah, you were 0-2. Never been Pakistan.
Nope.
And your seasons have been okay thus far. You were 3-2 entering this one, as was Pat. So you were both gunning to get to 4 wins. Obviously, only one of you could. And it was a very, very close game. I believe the closest win in LOC history. No on win. Obviously, we had the time.
Yeah.
It came down 85.58 to 85.48. 1 yard.
1 yard. 1 yard win. And
the longest yard.
That's it. This certainly feels like it. If we talk about the last matchup that we talked about between Gridiron Gang and Iknan being the close down the field, well, this was very, very close.
Yeah.
1 yard. What can you say about that? Stand-up performances. The Philly D. If it wasn't Philly, come on, Washington. Any more points? Washington and Forward Flyers would have won this game. And on the flip side, Cam Newton's heroics in the last 2 quarters of the game on Sunday.
Yeah.
Really just
both teams won without their heroes.
No, it's it. It corralled this. Shame about giving Jonathan Stewart a load of touchdowns. I mean, come on, Cam, you're supposed to be a running quarterback, man. But anyway, Pakistan carrying on its very, very consistent form. Forward Flyers. I'm pleased with 3-3 at this point of the year, guys. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But it could be a lot more. And 1 yard here and there. There's a lot of things that can be said and done, but ultimately a win is a win for Pakistan.
Yep, and Pakistan obviously 3-0 against you now, and impressively has won 4 on the trot. Really rebounded well from that 0-2 start. Next one, Bare Necessities take on ARZ, and we won't spend a lot of time on this one for reasons you'll soon see. Bare Necessities, after starting the season as one of the best teams, has since been the worst team, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, ADOZ was kind of the opposite. They started off looking like one of the worst teams, and they rebounded to look good, but ultimately, we kind of expected them to take a step back again. Bare Necessities we might expect them to get back when they get a few players back from injury, but this game was pretty ugly all round. Benicestis don't lose it 80-62.
No, they don't, and that's the thing. Benicestis, if you look, we'll see as we carry on. I think there are only 2 other teams that they would have beaten across the whole league.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, as much as this is a good win, it more says about what ADRZ didn't do than what Benicestis did do. And as we say every week, when I think your 4th highest scoring player on your team is your kicker, that isn't really.
Unless it's Adam Vinatieri and his 21 points.
Well, this is true. It's some freak performance. I mean, Dan Bailey is a great kicker, as we all know.
Yeah.
But say 12 points. Isn't going to happen every week, but this scoreline is rather flat. Brandon Cooks had a great game, and most of the points there were on a massive touchdown catch in that game. So anyone who saw it, was a brilliant play. But it amounts to 23.5 points. Rest isn't really a lot to shout about. You expect Le'Veon to get a lot of yardage across the course of the game, and then we're looking at lots of 1s and 2s and.
Pretty ugly.
Yeah, not a lot to see. But then we're talking ugly. We're talking ADRZ here, and ADRZ. Oh my word! I mean, we're looking. Apart from the QB, but obviously Bortz didn't have a great game neither against the Bears, and the Bears D have picked up. As we've seen.
Yeah, underrated. I think it's fair to say. Yeah. Bears D this season.
Absolutely. From what was a shit show last year, it really has improved. The only way was up there. But with this, the special teams have really bailed ADRZ out. The Cardinals D, they really have. They really did.
It could have been a lot worse.
It could have been an awful lot worse. We've seen in the past, 30, 40 points, and this is what it could have been. That's what it could have been, people. And this is last year's champions. So, a week that they want to forget quite quickly. Hopefully, they have another one of these next week, as we'll see later on. Guess who they're playing. But yeah. So when a lot of your outfield players don't get out of single figures. And some of them don't even get out of, if you're talking about Dwayne Allen, unfortunately gets injured, but even so, doesn't even get 1 point.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
No. Benicestis wins their first game after 3 losses in a row, while I think the opposite can be said of Nigel. He loses one after winning 3 on the trot.
Yeah.
And I believe Benicestis tied that one up to 4-4 all time now. Moving on, Tuckfards take on the Brady Bunch, another team that had never beaten a team. Tuckfards were 0-3 against the Brady Bunch all time, somewhat surprisingly perhaps. Entering this one, Tuckfards obviously started the season quite slowly, but really the last few weeks they've had a good time of it. Meanwhile, the Brady Bunch have been quite volatile, but they have got Tom Brady back. But that was not enough this week, as they dropped their 3rd game in a row. 89-75.
Well, no, it's right. And this really is what I shall nickname the roller coaster bowl. The ups and downs that we see here on both teams, it really does make for interesting viewing. We said last week that Tuckfards are going to have to rely on their big players to make the difference, and bring Gronk back in, and what does Gronk do? He goes and scores a high number of points, which is exactly what you want. Terrence West again, a nice pick. That's draft value.
Yeah, I mean he was kind of tipped as a late round sleeper, maybe not straight away because obviously it was a bit of a committee, but Forsett gets cut. Yeah, and he takes the backfield.
That's it, absolutely, and we've seen brilliant results since. So you can't really complain with that. However, on the flip side, you see obviously Big Ben's gone down now, so we've seen some really high value performances from him recently. Will Cap come back in and do as well? Probably not. That's it. And again, there's not a lot to write about from the rest of the team. On the other side, Brady Bunch, it's Brady or bust here, as you say. That's it. Every week, Brady or bust. And this week was Brady and then a lot of bust.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Again, the same problem as we had with ADRZ last time. There's a lot of outfield players not
the only other player other than Brady to go over 10 points.
Yeah.
May go over 5 really, apart from the D, was at the kicker.
Yeah,
just got 11 points. The only other player to go over 11
what
points.
The hell? It's it, and that's not really where you want to be. I mean, there's a lot of big names in there. And you're looking at Antonio Brown. Throughout the rest of the season, or certainly for the next few weeks, is his value going to be impacted by the fact that his number 1 quarterback isn't there? Absolutely. You see that the Giants, they haven't really been playing quite as well. OBJ's coming back into that offense now. Sterling Shepard's not been much of an influence, as we see in New Orleans all the time. Breeze likes to spread it around to everybody.
Yeah.
Which Willie Snead isn't the guy at the moment.
And Carlos Hyde's arm is in a sling.
Absolutely. On the bench, are we gonna get bailed out? Well, Jay Ajayi's on the bench, and that's maybe the reason that
that came out of nowhere. We can't fault Ross for not playing.
We can't. But next week it's not going to come out of nowhere. And I think that sticking him in there is again another boom or bust player.
Yeah.
Miami playing someone pretty decent next week as well. Who are they playing? They're playing someone that They're playing Buffalo. Which is a very, very difficult game. So I'm not sure that's going to make too much of an impact. But hey, get on the coaster and ride it, because it's going to be an interesting one with the break.
Yeah, sure is. Tuck Pods meanwhile win not only their first game against Ross, but 3 on the trot.
Whoa! Who knew? Who knew? I've never ever called them the worst I've ever seen in my life ever again.
Whenever you do that, they wake up.
That's it. Or Caps do score loads next week.
Yeah, yeah. Our next game, again, not the greatest, but it was an alright game. So this had a bit of a rivalry to it. Cash for Gold took on Tom's Tyrants. Bit of a rivalry there. Obviously, Tom brought Ollie to the league.
Yep.
Storylines entering this one. Cash for Gold was leading the division entering this game at 3-2. Meanwhile, Tom's Tyrants, after a good week 1, just has not looked like the Tom's Tyrants. We know they've looked a bit out of sorts. Obviously, no history in this one. First time playing each other, and Tom takes it 96-78.
That's it. And our foundations are rooted here on 2 players, I think, with Tom's Tyrants. Yeah, they really have propelled them.
One of them finally came good.
Yeah,
both of them kind of finally came good.
This is true. I said after some shaky weeks, Andy Lux actually turned up, scored a few points.
I believe Lamar Miller gets his first touchdowns of the season.
See, that's unreal for someone who's drafted as high as he was. So, saying 29 points is what you'd expect from a guy like that every single week. Say the guy who's in the backfield in Houston, and it's his thing, but it's not working. But anyway, so it's a good win for Tom's Tyrants. They can even manage to carry a player, which is even better. So that could have been a 100-point week, and we'll be talking about Tom's Tyrants on the way up. But as we said earlier on the show, Eddie Lacy's gone down. He has options on the bench, so we see that. We see Chris Ivory, who is playing in Jacksonville.
James White's
coming back in. Say, had a good week last week. Yeah. So between those two, who knows? I would say Tyler Eifert coming back in as well is obviously going to make a real difference. So say those are, although Lacy going down is one bad thing, say Eifert coming back in maybe makes up for that.
Yep.
On the other side, Cash for Gold carrying on their rotten run. Aaron Rodgers, as we said earlier in the season, Aaron Rodgers was likely to make or break their season, and they've kind of broken it so far.
There was a stat I read about a month ago, I think, how Aaron Rodgers has had since 2015, the start of the 2015 season.
Yeah.
He's basically been the equivalent of Alex Smith.
See, that's interesting. I say, obviously nobody rates Alex Smith, but
as a streamer from time to time, is it right?
Yeah,
but
there are better options out there.
Yeah.
That's it. And yes, Aaron Rodgers hasn't had a consistent receiver set, which I kind of get. But for someone who's hyped up to be the quarterback that he is, he's being shown up by lesser guys, or supposedly lesser guys this year, which is really sad to see. Across the board, Cash for Gold again. Ezekiel Elliott, obviously, is the kind of value that you want. Show up every week, getting the yardage. No touchdowns this week either. I mean, that's the frightening thing, is that if guy gets a touchdown, he's 20 points every week, and that's madness. But other than that,
not much to say.
There really isn't a lot. We're looking like early season promise of Doug Baldwin ain't there again. When you're playing Derrick Henry as your RB2, you're not going to be getting them points every week. He's just not the man in Tennessee. The receiver set, not too bad. Cooper and Meredith going for a few, but it's not enough there really. Not enough consistently.
No.
So, sorry, Ollie, but I think your form might have run to an end here. And 3-3 is not a bad position to be in.
No, absolutely not. I mean, as a rookie as well.
100%.
Yeah. Cash for Gold falls to 3-3. Meanwhile, Tom's Tyrants wins their first game in the last 5.
Wow.
So they claim the 2-4.
Well, I tell you what, if Tom can get back to 4-4,
I don't want to say it again, but I'm going to remember they were 2-5 and came back and won it in 2014. So.
Well,
we've seen it before.
We have seen it before. I tell you what, I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna put it on the line here. That's it. I don't see it happening. And if you want to find me a forfeit that I can't think of right now, then please do write into the show.
Yeah, please do. Tweet us in.
That's it.
Our last game of last week then was actually a pretty good game, ending on a high. The Dream Team took on Detonators, which is kind of a rivalry matchup. It's a historical-ish one. Detonators were 4-5 against the Dream Team entering this one. The Dream Team, as we all know, have had the worst luck, it would seem, so far this season. They've had good weeks and been outscored, and then they've stumbled a bit and still lost. Meanwhile, Detonators have been a model of consistency. All but 1 week, they've been over 90 points every week. They haven't been too high over, like 100, but they've been really consistent in the middle, which is going to get you wins, as evidenced by entering this one, their 3-2 record. Dream Team was 1-4, but the Dream Team won this one 6-4 against Detonators, now 103-98. Tell me about the game.
Some serious performances here, and we're seeing, I think maybe if we were Brady or bust on the Brady Bunch, this is Breeze or bust.
Breeze or bust, yeah.
Breeze or bust on the Dream Team, because the rest of the performances, bar Julio, sucked. Oh, no, lie. That's it. Everything else was a disappointment. Drew Brees scores 40 points, and that's, he did have a great game, and it was a shootout. And it had all the hallmarks of a classic, but you don't get a quarterback scoring 40 points every week. And I'll say that I'll qualify this. This is probably the best team that they've got, because they haven't got that many players on the bench that they can rely on.
They really don't.
So 103 points. It ain't their ceiling, but it's certainly close. But certainly if those points that Breeze scored are filtered down to the rest of the team. On the other side, the Detonators, I like this team. Again, some serious performances. OBJ turns up for the first time this year, which is great. Dax Prescott, what? Who knew? Who knew he'd be as good as he was this season? But again, not a lot else to write home about across the board.
But unlike the Dream Team, you look at the bench and there are options.
Again, that's it. And that's exactly that. And there are, and you're seeing some high scoring players on the bench that they can turn to. Because it will get to bye week season, and then some of these players will undoubtedly be needed.
Yeah.
Who knew Terrell Pryor? I mean, who think he would turn out any good? But he is fantasy
changing
relevant.
Position and still a relevant fantasy.
That's
player.
it. And
NFL player.
This is true. And even so, he gets receiving yards, and there is the potential. There is there for Terrell Pryor this year for him to get passing yards. So that's a real interesting option. I think Detonators are stacked with potential. It's just what comes out week in, week out. But good win for the Dream Team at last.
Yeah,
they deserve one.
They do. Dream Team moved to 2-4, while Detonators fall to 4-2, and that is all of last week's games. Some quick notes. Tom notched his 60th all-time win.
Wow.
Ben notched his 50th all-time win.
Did he?
And Viv notched his 40th all-time
Ben
win.
won 50 games.
50 games.
Jesus Christ. Well, congratulations to you, sir.
Yeah. And we'll just take a quick look at the standings now. So, Gridiron Gang still leading up the Southampton division, which, quite funnily, every team in the Southampton division lost last week.
Really?
Yeah, every single one.
Well, there you go. So Southampton is wide open.
It is, it really is. So I'm heading up 4-2. Meanwhile, ADOZ 45 is 3-3, and then Brady Bunch at 2-4.
Oh, big game this week then.
Yeah. Portsmouth division, but is still at the top 4-2. However, they do have company now. Pakistan also 4-2. Iknan, they're 3-3. Meanwhile, Tom Starrett still at the bottom 2-4. And finally, Winchester, amazingly, the Togfards is now leading that division.
How?
At 3-3. However, Ben Assisties and Cash for Gold are also 3-3. While the Dream Team is at 2-4.
I tell you what, though,
it's a close one.
There is. I mean, that is the Winchester division is the cesspit of the AOC this year.
The cesspit is a good descriptive word for what that is. So we will take a look at the power rankings now, as always, and get your reaction. So with everything middling up in the power rankings, it should the power rankings should reflect that. Sorry, after last week, and Iknan is at the top, climbing up from 2 to 1. Gridiron Gang basically swaps, dropping from 1 to 2. Detonators climb 1 as well. They go from 4 to 3. Pakistan climb from 5 to 4. Brady Bunch, they drop from 3 to 5. Dream Team holding at 6, as does Cash for Gold at 7. Forge Flies at 8. Tokfards climbs 1 from 10 to 9. Tom Torrance climbs 1 from 11 to 10. ADOZ drops from 8 to 11. And Ben Necessities remains at the seller.
I think that's probably fair, and I think that we're going to see the Brady Bunch drop like a stone over the next few weeks. Unfortunately, I don't want to say it, but this week it was #Brady or bust, as we saw in that's it, and it is, and the rest. Some of the performances were really bad, but other than that, I think we have a fair indication now as to where people are, where teams are, and where their strengths and weaknesses are. It is looking awfully good for Ignan at 3-3 at the moment. Some unlucky losses, as I think you'll be right to say. But last year's runners-up at this stage, proven they don't need Cam. They don't need to ride him. They've got a team amongst themselves anyway, and maybe statistics really do work. At the bottom, I think that's again right. Benitez's ADRZ and Tom's Tyrants look to be the weakest teams in the league thus far. Benitez's, I think, are climbing their way out of the mire.
Yeah, when they get their players back, I think they'll go up.
Yeah, but ADRZ are falling like a stone. Yeah. They are free falling, which is a bit of a shame, really, considering the position they were in towards the earlier part of the season, where they were scoring points for fun.
Yeah.
But as we've seen in this, there's a lot of teams out there towards the bottom who will yo-yo.
Yeah.
Simply because of the nature of the teams that they have.
Absolutely. But moving to next week, we'll take a look at next week's games now, and of course we have to pick a marquee matchup.
We do.
So looking over it here, I had a quick scan earlier, not some incredible ones, but there is one that jumps out right there. And I think it's going to be that one because it is a Wembley Bowl. Let's not forget. We haven't talked about it yet, but we're talking about next week. We're both going to be there, as are Ollie, Tom, and my dad. And speaking of Ollie and Tom, they just so happen to be playing now. Wembley Bowls aren't as dynamic as they used to be with the early kickoff. Unless you've got a player in the game, there's not so much rivalry to it. However, the car journey back will definitely have some.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Wembley Bowl nonetheless. Bedetnes take on Tom's Tyrants. Entering this one, really a tale of two seasons. Bedetnes 4-2, Tom's Tyrants 2-4. Tom gets his first win in a few weeks last week, while Bedetnes drops an odd one. Projections have this one 92-55 currently, but there are a few players missing from Tom's Tyrants. Line-up changes on Bedetnes' side. Matt Ryan comes into the lineup for Dak Prescott. Spencer Ware comes into the starting lineup as well for, I believe, Ryan Matthews. Travis Benjamin might come in as well, I don't know. On the other side of the ball, I'm going to go ahead and guess that Tom Tyrants is unchanged. However, Lacey will come out for the injury. Benjamin will come out for a bye, and they don't have a tight end or defense in currently. History of this matchup is 4-5 in favour of Tom's Tyrants. So Tom's Tyrants 5-4 against Bedetnes all time. What do you make of this game?
It's a Wembley Bowl. It's good. It's going to be competitive. Obviously, we're all going there to watch OBJ do his thing. But I can't see anything other than Bedetnes win here. They are pretty much full strength. Tom's Tyrants, obviously, as we talked about in the review, have their problems. They're also missing 4 players through buys and injuries, which is a bit of a problem. If I'm going to put it out there now, I think Eifert will come back in at tight end. I think that either White or Ivory will come in at running back, and I think Deshaun Jackson will come in at receiver.
They did pick up a defense. I think it was the Texans.
Right. Okay. And Jack Doyle may play tight end if Eifert can't play. Which, even so, that's not the worst thing that they could do. It's difficult for Tom this week. I think the card.
I think even if they were at full strength, I think it's fair to say we'd still probably be leaning towards Bedetnes.
I think simply because they can't fall under 90 points, which seems to be the real benchmark this year.
Yeah.
It might be an interesting car journey home for Tom. I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm going Bedetnes too. Next game, Ignan against Pakistan. Storylines entering this one. Ignan is 3-3 at the moment. Meanwhile, Pakistan is 4-2. I think, is this a division? It is a divisional week, so really vying for position in the division here. Projections currently have this one at 108, 79 in Pakistan's favour. Lineup changes. Philip Rivers comes into the starting lineup for Brian Hoyer for Pakistan. I think Alan Robinson comes back into the team as well for John Brown. Tevin Coleman might come in as well. The facts, I'm not sure. On Ignan's side of the ball, they look pretty unchanged at the moment. They have got the Panthers on a bye at the moment. History of this matchup, Iknan is 0-1 against Pakistan. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that's it. Again, it's nice to see two fairly full-strength sides. Yes, again, missed in a D, but they say it shouldn't be too much of a problem to bring a streaming option in. I'd also be surprised if we didn't play Matt Stafford against Washington rather than Russell Wilson against Arizona away, because they've had their problems. But anyway, yes, I think that the matchups here
very much in Pakistan's favour.
Absolutely, and I'm seeing some key players here. We're talking, Blunt against Pittsburgh.
Rivers against Atlanta. Gordon against Atlanta.
That's it. And Fitzgerald against Seattle, which obviously is a difficult one. Jeffrey against Green Bay. They tend not to have a great day.
This is on Iknan's side of the ball.
It's on Iknan's side of the ball. Yeah, that's it. So and Pakistan certainly have the better matchups on that part. So yeah, I think we're at the top of the power rankings right now. I think Pakistan really are quite
they're quite consistent.
Yeah, they are. And they've won, as we said earlier on, they won 4 on the bounce. And it's quite difficult to get away from that streak, especially when you've got players in form. And it can be said that last week that some players just didn't turn up for Pakistan. They really didn't. With that in mind, having a better week, I think that they're probably they're favourites for this. As it currently stands. But don't rule Iknan out, as we said earlier on.
Absolutely.
And they can be explosive on their day.
Definitely. I'm going to pick Pakistan as well. Awesome. For all the reasons you just said. The Dream Team take on Cash for Gold in our next game. I don't think these two have ever played each other before. No, they haven't. Storylines coming in this one. Dream Team is 2-4, getting a win last week. Amazingly, only one win behind the division leader. What a division it is. Cash for Gold, meanwhile, they've dropped 2 on the bounce. They're at 3-3 right now. Projections have this one is quite a tight game at the moment, 96-94. Lineup changes. Dream Team. They've got Vernon Davison at tight end for Greg Olsen, who's on a bye. Tyler Lockett comes into the flex, I think, as well. He might have already been there. Sorry, I'm not sure. Meanwhile, Cash for Gold, Zach Zenner is starting at running back for Ezekiel Elliott, who's on a bye. I think they already had Derrick Henry in the starting lineup, and I think otherwise unchanged. Tell me about this game.
Well, where to start? I think that if the Dream Team are going to win anything consistently this year, this is probably the time to do it. This
is the kind of game they need to win at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they probably will, simply because we're seeing Cash for Gold try 2 fairly unknown unknown running backs. It's central to their plans. That's the problem, is that you've got Zach. Yes, he's coming in as probably the number 1 there because they've had terrible injury luck. But Derrick Henry's not going to do a great deal either. We've seen Doug Baldwin out of Nick. We've seen Jimmy Graham also out of Nick. He's had 2 fairly good weeks this year, but he's not going to do that every single week. We said that Alshon Jeffrey had a tough matchup. Well, so does Meredith here as well. As not being the number 1 receiver in Chicago. So, if there's anything to come out of it, it's got to be for Aaron Rodgers, and you'd like to think that Aaron Rodgers will be able to pull it out. But Chicago, their D's, as we said earlier on, been playing very well.
Yeah, and Rodgers has been struggling.
Exactly that. So I do fear for Cash for Gold this week, despite the fact that the projection goes in his favour. Dream Team, on the other hand, they have a lot of their starters still there. Anything that's being changed is in a position which doesn't really matter too much. We're looking at tight ends. So Vernon Davis coming in, Tyler Lockett's coming in. So but if Doug Baldwin's having a bad day, Tyler Lockett's having a bad day.
Exactly.
So it's going to even itself out. So I think that the Dream Team are probably more likely to win this game. Cash for Gold. They'll have better weeks, but it won't be this one.
Yeah, completely agree on all accounts. Once again, and I also am going to pick the Dream Team. We're agreeing a lot again. In this next one, are we going to agree here? The Tugfards take on Bare Necessities. Storylines entering this one. Both these teams at 3-3. Winner of this game could, depending on what happens in the game we just talked about, could win their game.
Yeah.
Could be in the lead in the division. Obviously, Tugfards has won 3 on the trot. Bare Necessities had lost 3 on the trot but recovered last week. Projections are currently 101 to 69. Tugfards Colin Kaepernick comes into the starting lineup for the Tugfarts in favour of the injured Ben Roethlisberger, whose backup is Landry Jones.
Landry Jones, that's him, that's the guy,
Jaquiz Rogers also coming straight into the starting lineup from the waiver wire. Alan Hearns is coming into the starting lineup as well, and I believe Michael Crabtree is probably already there. The necessities, however, they are probably unchanged at the moment as they have not changed their kicker. History of this matchup is Ben necessities are 5-5 against Tugfarts, so even split between these two. What do you make of this game?
Obviously, Ben necessities are. They've won a game, which is great, but say they tend to be playing teams who aren't in great nick every week, which is lucky, but hey ho. Yeah, they're going to need some. They're going to need some matchups to go their way here. Starting from the top, it's a real change. It's a real difference. You know, Tampa Bay have really been giving quarterbacks points this year, and I think that's probably the reason why Kaepernick's playing for the Tugfarts.
And when you play Kaepernick in fantasy, we have a laugh at it. The running game for Kaepernick is the base you get. You know, I believe he got something like 60, 70 yards last week. That's already 6-7 points.
Yeah.
He only needs, to get a standard quarterback 10 or something on top of that, and it's already a 16-point game, which for a guy you've just picked off of the waiver wire isn't awful.
No, and that's what you want, and that's where a lot of his value comes from, especially against the Tampa Bay D, who are
porous,
to say the least. But talking about non-porous Ds, we're talking about Carson Plummer playing the Seattle D. The Legion of Boom aren't going to be very kind to
playing in Arizona, so that does help. We see in that division when Seattle play away, they do tend to struggle a bit.
Yeah,
but certainly a tough matchup still.
100%, and I think that's reflected in his projected score. They haven't been playing great. They haven't been playing very well this year, or certainly up to the same standards as they were last season. But yeah, he's going to want some stuff to go his way. I think Le'Veon versus New England could be mouth-watering.
Yeah.
I think Brandon Cooks again playing in Kansas City, but say coming off a good week. Jeremy Curley here. I'm looking at his inclusion in the flex, and we're talking about how porous the Tampa Bay D is. Say Jeremy Curley's the number one receiver. Kaepernick.
Although Kaepernick likes to air out, Curley had value when Gabbert was the quarterback.
It is true, and I think yes, if you were a Torrey Smith owner this week, then you might be in.
Potentially, I don't know. Is he owned?
I don't know. Someone's got to own him. If you don't, pick him up because he's worth a go. So he's the deep threat there, I suppose. But say, will Curley carry on that form? All the hallmarks are yes, but as you say, this could be the turning point for him, which then doesn't turn out to a very smart pickup. On the other side, say the pick inclusive of Jaquiz Rogers is interesting because if Doug Martin plays, it's completely redundant, and
and they'd probably go to I don't know, be Yeldon, I guess.
Yeah. And again, he hasn't had a great year either, or even Foster. But say Foster, that's not a good matchup. Neither against Buffalo. It's a real mix here, but I think that the Tugfarts have slightly more star quality and value than the Ben necessities do, and they are in form. And I hate to say it, but Tugfarts are going to win this game.
Once again, I'm going to agree with you, and I can't believe that we're picking the Tugfarts after how they started the season.
Seriously,
it's remarkable how much this team has turned around. I mean, I look down. Really, I can't fault any of the starters other than Rodgers. And that's purely because Martin comes back. If Martin doesn't come back, then I can't even fault that.
Yeah.
You've got Gronk, Crabtree, Marshall, who's been pretty good. Like I just said, Kaepernick.
West.
Could be fancy relevant. West. Rodgers could have his day. Even Hearns, we've seen, can have his day. So
the Vikings D.
And who's, to be fair, was one of their best players.
Yeah.
Is one of their best players. Meanwhile, like you said, the consistency just isn't with Ben necessities right now. So, yeah, I'm going to pick Tugfarts as well. Next game here, ADRZ take on Forge Flyers. History of this matchup, where is it? Forge Flyers and ADRZ are split at 4-4. A lot of even games this week. Projections very split as well, 97-95. Entering this game, both teams are 3-3, really vying for that division position, both coming off a loss. Lineup changes for ADRZ. I don't think they've changed their team yet. Eddie Rourke might have come into the flex. for Gio Bernard or something. On Forge Flyer side of the ball, Marcus Mariota starting at quarterback now for Cam Newton, who's on a bye. Jarrett McKinnon's also coming to the starting lineup for who?
Darren Sproles.
There you go. Other than that, I think you're unchanged right now.
Correct.
Tell me about your
game. It's going to be close. At the moment, ADRZ's projection is carrying a player as well. Theoretic won't play. So that's interesting in itself. But quite what they're going to bring into the team, I probably think Bernard will probably play against Cleveland. That's the smart move anyway. Which then puts ADRZ much higher in the terms of projection. I think that they did have a down week last week, and I think for them, there's a lot of their players are playing at home this week, which is interesting.
Yeah, a lot.
Which
7 of 9,
which tends to make a great deal of difference, especially when you're playing, what will be 2 Cincinnati players against Cleveland at home. Obviously in a massive interstate game.
Yeah.
So if that's not juicy enough, then what is? On the other side, obviously Cam Newton coming out of the team. On paper looks bad. Marcus Mariota has been in great form, and he's played in Tennessee, which it serves to be a fairly decent matchup, I think. But if I'm going to be very self-critical, there's a lot of Titans players in there. We've got 3 currently rolling with them: Mariota, Murray, and Walker. Albeit the 3 best players on the team.
Yeah.
So you've got to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd hope that. The receivers have come good this week. Say Nelson and Hilton are projected quite highly, and the other niggling thing in that lineup is McKinnon going to do it this week, or is Asiata going to do it this week?
Yeah.
Who really
have you played Asiata yet?
I've played him once. He didn't do it. I played McKinnon once. He did do it, and I played McKinnon again. He didn't do it. Right. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen there? I think it has the hallmarks of a very close game as well. Much like Forge Flyers have been interested in the last few weeks. I still think, though, judging by recent form, that the Flyers still have it in the tank.
We're 5 for 5 on agreed so far, because I'm also going to pick Forge Flyers.
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah, pretty much what you just said at the end there. You've been, as I've said in the power rankings, really consistent. A Detonators-esque team, just at a lower level, and I think you'll agree with that. And that's just because of your early season injuries to pretty much your starting running backs at the time.
It's wrecked me.
So you're always good, I'd say, for between 80 to 100 points.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, ADLZ, we haven't seen that. They could go over 100 or they could not reach 70.
Yeah.
Is really what we've seen from them. And while they definitely do have some really good matchups, I tend to always side with the consistency, because even if you get to 90, as we've seen with the Detonators, you can still win games that way.
Yeah.
Because players can let you down. So I'm going with your team as well.
Wow.
Our last game here then, Gridiron Gang take on the Brady Bunch. History of this matchup, Gridiron Gang is 3-0 against the Brady Bunch all time. Ross has never beaten me so far. Storylines coming to this one, I am 4-2, just coming off a loss. Meanwhile, Ross is 2-4, losing 3 straight, so they're on a bit of a slide right now. Projections currently 94 to 81. Lineup changes in this one. Doug Martin is currently in the flex for Gridiron Gang in favour of Jordan Howard, and the Bengals D are in there as well. On the Brady Bunch, they are unchanged, I believe. Tell me about this game.
Yeah, I think the Brady Bunch's struggles may well continue this week. As we talked about earlier on in the show, Carlos Hyde is out, or could potentially be out.
Yeah.
Which then gives the option for Ajayi to come in, or even Bilal Powell, who hasn't had a terrible year so far. No. But he's no Carlos Hyde. So yeah, I think that if we're seeing the same kind of problems as last week, then the Brady Bunch, will have to rely on Brady a lot. You'd like to think that with a rookie quarterback on the field for Pittsburgh, that he may well be in the field a lot, which is good, which is what you want. But say, is he going to score 33 points every week to bail you out of the shit? Possibly not. On the other side, we're saying one of the more dynamic running back cores of the whole league. And we're seeing, say, Christine Michael, David Johnson, and Doug Martin coming back in if he plays. That is a formidable 3. Along with Marvin Jones, who is I think he's the leading yardage receiver in the league.
He was entering last week, not sure now, but he's up there for sure. He's
certainly up there. So that's what you want against Washington as well. So that's going to be a pass off, especially with no running back really for Detroit. So I like that too. And see, Vinatieri. Can he carry on his unbelievable kicking form? He's back. That's not too bad for a 41, 42-year-old.
43,
43 that's unreal.
43, yeah.
Unreal. So I think the Gridiron Gang have this one. They're not second in the power ranks for no reason. And the Brady Bunch, it's all dependent on what their man does.
Yeah, exactly. And so Brady or bust. I think Brady's going to get this team X amount of points each week, and then, as was more the case with my team last week, I just relied on everyone else to chip in.
Yeah.
You look at guys like Antonio Brown in there, Jeremy Hill playing against Cleveland, Carlos Hyde if he plays, maybe J.J. as well. All could be, they are the real force behind the boom or bustness of the Brady Bunch. Meanwhile, on the other side of the board, much like Benetez, but better. I haven't dropped below 90 points thus far this season, so very consistent team. I think my team is the highest scoring team right now as well. You can't count against my team at the moment. The consistency is there, and I think, as I said just before this one, I always go with consistency, so 100%. I'm going to pick my team here as well.
So it's a clean sweep, folks. It's a podcast sweep.
We all agreed. We agreed on every game. And let's just check if there's any milestones for you this week before we sign off here. So looking down my win-loss things, which you of course can go and look at. You just need to hop onto the league Facebook page and the link is there. Ollie can get his 60th all-time win with a win this week, and that looks like it for the wins. Meanwhile, my dad and Tom could notch their 50th all-time losses, as could Ollie with a loss. Chris could notch and become the only team with 60 losses.
Wow.
Unfortunately, already the highest losing team.
That's what happens.
You could be the first to reach 60 losses this week.
That's what happens when you lose like 2 years in a row. You have like 22 losses over 2 years.
Yeah, that is what happens.
That sucks.
Nige could also drop to his 40th all-time loss as well this week. Looking at regular season stats, Ben could get his 50th regular season win next week. Viv could get his 40th regular season win. Pat could reach his 10th regular season.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, in 2 seasons, all right.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it for the milestones. So that's your podcast.
Yeah, that's it. Good one all around. Say, I hope that somebody wins by more than 1 yard this week.
Yeah, and with that, we'll say goodbye because we don't want to go through that.
We don't. We do not. Ties only. 1 yard sucks.
Yeah, we don't need another tie either.
It's a statistical nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, enjoy the Wembley Bowl. We're going to have fun.
We will have great fun.
And we'll be back next week.
With Tales from Twickenham in a bit.